Everybody, good afternoon.
Hello.
So, before I get started, first of all, I want to give a round of applause to everybody who's been working really hard at volunteering today for this conference. This is one of my favorites, and I'm so happy to be back, and everybody who's been volunteering and helping out. Thank you so much. All right, so first of all, I'm going to tell you, the talk is not about Qbot. The talk is not about Qbot. It was going to be about Qbot more, but it is going to be about Qbot a little bit less than I had anticipated, which is always fun. A little bit about me before we dig into the content. So my name is Stef. I'm an intelligence analyst at Red Canary. I've been there for about a year and a half on the CTI team. It's been fantastic. Before that, I spent 2 years doing digital forensics and incident response at Navy. And before that, I actually was here in Augusta. So 5 years ago, I was at my very first B-Sides as a volunteer, and I was about to graduate from the School of Computer and Cyber Sciences, go Jacks. So if we've got some other students and folks that are in here, shout out. It's awesome hanging there, and it's a really wonderful program. So I'm very happy to folks that I've seen here already. Before that, I was in clinical psychology, which is interesting and fun and has helped me in my CTI work, but not in the way that you might think. And I'm happy to answer questions about that afterwards. Folks are usually kind of curious. And a fun fact, I've had to admit that my favorite hobby is actually just learning new things. Right now, I'm studying French. Please don't try to speak French to me quite yet. I'm working on it with the owl. The owl and I are making progress, but it's gonna take a while. All right, so bottom line up front, because I want y'all to see the cake before we bake the cake. Initial execution techniques are really, really frequently changed in today's threat landscape because they're cheap, right? You know, if you think of the pyramid of pain, changing a loader script is easy, super easy. And adversaries take advantage of that to try and evade detection as often and as successfully as possible. But if you can keep track of the initial execution techniques and you can keep track of the changes, it can absolutely pay off. Earlier detection gives you time to respond. IR taught me that having more time or as much time to respond as you can, like every minute is a wonderful thing. And it also lets you stop follow-on activity, hopefully before it starts, right? That's the ideal. That's what we're striving for. We know the adversaries are going to try and put evil onto user machines, and it's our job to detect it and stop it as quickly as possible. So if we can stop it before it even starts delivering malware, that is the best. It's a really good feeling too. And you can use open source intelligence to help you with this. I'm in kind of a privileged position as a CTI nerd. I get to do this full time. I know that's not the case for a lot of folks, a lot of teams, but you can take advantage of the really, really awesome defenders that are working in the space and sharing information and kind of expand your team in a way once you find sources that you really trust. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about sort of where in the execution chain we're talking about, especially for folks who might be a little bit newer to cybersecurity. So first thing, you've got initial access. Initial access techniques have changed in some ways over time, but there's only so many ways that the bad guys can reach out to victim systems, right? There's only so many points of contact that you can have. You've got different kinds of phishing. You've got SEO poisoning. Gotten a lot more popular. You have USB threats. Somebody, let's see, whoever can tell me the first USB-based threat off the top of their head gets the giveaway for today. Yes?
USB killer, right?
Like the actual, like a piece of malware, like it's delivered via USB.
Oh.
I think you were next.
Stuxnet?
Yes. All right. Stuxnet it is. There are a lot of good choices. So you have won a Bash Bunny USB testing device. All right. There are lots of good choices. Raspberry Robin, I'm a fan. I'm not a fan, but that's another one. Andromeda, actually, has been an issue. Gamber's been an issue again, so don't sleep on USBs. After initial access, you have what we're talking about. You've got that initial execution. You've got the first behaviors that happen on a system. And that's when you're going to see your cryptors and your droppers and your loaders. So this is what we're talking about. This is where I'm hoping to help encourage folks to pay extra close attention to the very first set of behaviors that they see, so we can intervene in this space before other things happen, before we have persistence creation, before lateral movement starts in your network, before they can set up C2 communications or reach out to additional remote resources and pull down more payloads. Because like I said, if you can intervene here, if you can stop it here, none of the rest can happen, which is really great. That's what we want to do. So, for part one, I have a brand new bird cluster to talk about. So at Red Canary, we have bird clusters, Red Canary, so we'll have color bird. And this is actually brand new, like just the last week or so. So I want to use it as an example for one single loader, one single piece of scripting delivering multiple payloads. Let's talk about Databot first, because it's going to start with Databot. Databot is an info stealer that Proofpoint reported on and named in 2018. And it's been around since then. It's been fairly active, although it did drop off a little bit in activity this summer, which is interesting, and we'll come back to that. There are several different delivery methods that it uses. Phishing is very popular, as well as having it in cracked games and cracked code. And so what will happen with this, like a lot of phishes, is you'll have the phishing site, you'll have the lure, once you interact with the lure, you'll get a zip archive with a VBS script loader, okay? So one big shout out to securitysuit.net. It's really hard on the endpoint side to get like pictures and stuff of the lures and the actual phishing pages. Because with Red Canary, we sit kind of behind endpoint security solutions and do neat stuff with the data that comes in. So here's kind of what it looks like. So you've got this money unclaimed or property unclaimed. You have several layers of user interaction to lull them into a false sense of security. And then eventually you download your report with your unclaimed property or your unclaimed money. And that gives you a malicious zip with a VBS inside. And it has the same name. So you'll have this very sus directory, and you'll get a zip with the username, so it won't say username, it will be the actual username. This is all anonymized data. And then you'll have a VBS file with the same name. And then you get WScript executing from that very sus directory. And then Databot goes on to use more WScript, so you get outbound netcons, you have MSI binaries that are created on this, and then those MSI binaries execute MSI exec commands, and shenanigans ensue. You don't have to remember all this, I just want to have this there to kind of show you what the VBS script looks like. This is from VirusTotal. It is from the enterprise version of VirusTotal, so this is from the content section. But there are so many open source sandboxes that you can go to find similar data and to take a look at the actual script. So the way it looks is you've got a bunch of junk comments, kind of bulk it out, provide some level of obfuscation. And then you've got plain text commands. Depending on the version of Databot, you'll have different plain text commands lurking. Sometimes they're obfuscated, sometimes they're not. So in September, like last month, September, we had some activity. We saw this behavior. We saw a phishing lure with a zip archive that contains a VBS script. Okay, all right. We have good detection analytics for that. We have good detection analytics for WScript executing from a very suspect directory. This is a very familiar looking naming convention. And the VBS loader script, it was all junk comments and plain text. So the payload was not Databot. It was Darkgate, which was surprising. We hadn't seen this kind of, these points of activity, these initial execution. We hadn't seen it with anything other than Databot up to that point. So Darkgate, surprise Darkgate. Darkgate is like the new hotness right now, y'all. I will talk about Darkgate more than once today. So it's a very popular malware as a service loader. It started getting offered on cybercrime forums this past summer. And it's got a lot of really neat built-in features, which is why the bad guys like it. You know, they're looking for currently something that does a lot of built-in automated evil, because one of their favorite payloads has been taken off the market, as we'll talk about in a bit. And one of the key features of Darkgate, and being able to tell whether or not you've got early Darkgate execution, is you'll see WScript spawning this really interesting command that will include renamed curl and renamed AutoIT being created on the system. So just kind of what Darkgate looks like-ish very initially. So I thought that was weird, and I wanted to figure out what had happened. I had all these competing theories. You know, you keep your very tinfoil hat. I'm sure that y'all who have been in this place where you see something you're not expecting, the theories can get crazy. Like, did the data bot threat actors like create Darkgate? Are they the same people? I've never seen them in the room at the same time together. And so the best place to start is looking at the data. Where does it start? We have an awesome analyst from our team, Tony Lambert, who has brought us all into the concept of the Cotton Eye Joe theory of malware analysis. Where did it come from? Where did it go? So we've got to start with where did it come from? In October, we saw that zip VBS naming convention, and it was definitely Databot. So this is absolutely a Databot payload that was ultimately delivered by what I'm going to say is a script that was written to download and continue executing additional payloads. So you've got this 253 naming convention of random characters. June, same thing, 253 is Databot. August, in August it changed a little bit. So still sus directories, still got the username, but now we've just got this 153 naming convention. That's not a big change, but it is a change, and it's a change that can be useful, can be leveraged for more information. This is still Databot, by the way. It's absolutely still Databot that was delivered after this thing, this loader, continued to deliver its payloads. So like I said, we get to September, we see this same pattern. We see this 151, and it is absolutely Darkgate. Since Darkgate is the new hotness, there's a lot of really, really good information sharing right off the bat, so we were able to keep track of what domains were associated, what IPs were associated with Darkgate activity. So I can very reliably say the payload that was going to be delivered from this loader was going to be Darkgate. And same thing. In fact, every piece of Darkgate malware, or Darkgate payload that we saw in September had this 151 naming convention. And it wasn't just that, too. So like I said, remember I mentioned that the scripts look the same. Like really the same. Like really a lot the same. These are not the same. You've got the jump comments, you've got plain text commands, but they led to different payloads. And all of that says to me, and said to us at Red Canary, this is something that's independent of the payload. This is something that you can attach a payload to, and it will deliver the payload for you. So just real quick, Red Canary clustering methodology. So to create a cluster at Red Canary, and this is a whole talk on its own, like threat naming and clustering is a big thing. First of all, we prefer for there to be no known community name. As you know, there are a lot of community names available to use. And threat names are all about categorizing behavior. It's all about coming up with a shorthand so when you're speaking to somebody else, you can say, oh, I saw Darkgate, and they know, oh, here's what Darkgate does. That's what it looks like. So if we can go ahead and use somebody else's term for that, that's good. We're communicating effectively, which is the point of naming the threats, is to categorize that behavior. If we see unique commonalities across multiple incidents, and I don't like to say ideally multiple environments, because that's not great, but it does create a pattern. One-offs can't be tracked, but patterns can. And we kind of create this distinct criteria for what we would say, you know, these qualities, we'll check these boxes, this activity is this threat. We will give it a cluster name, we'll give it a color number, And that gives us, this time around, Stef Rand Starling. So Stef Rand Starling, as we're tracking it, is this zip archive that's got the VBS loader in it. It's got those, that sus directory, really interesting file creation. The VBS script has those common patterns. There will then be an outbound netcon to pull down additional payloads. And so far, we've only seen Databot and Darkgate. But the nice thing about it is now we're tracking it. Now it's on our radar as something that is distinct from these threats. So if we only see it get to the point of file creation, we can still track it. We don't have to be like, well, we don't know what it was going to be. Was it going to be Databot? Was it going to be Darkgate? We don't know. We can track it really precisely, which is fun for us. And I want to, of course, give some mitigation strategies. This one I'm going to come back to more than once because this is so neat. So, one way to mitigate these loaders that love to exploit script execution is to create a GPO that will only let certain scripts open and execute automatically, and it will not let the others that are more high risk execute automatically. It will have them open in, for example, Notepad as text files. So, this VBS script is downloaded, and you have a GPO in place where VBS scripts for most users open as text files. The end. That's it. You've done it. You've cut it off at that place of initial execution. There are detailed steps. I will make sure that everybody has access to this link. We included it in a blog on Bootloader earlier this year. You will need to test this, but think about it. Consider if every user in your environment needs to be able to open and execute every kind of script that there is. WSF, VBS. Do we really need to be able to do that? One thing to kind of think about. And I also want to give you a detection opportunity that will work for multiple threats as well. So this is very broad strokes, pseudo-analytic code. So looking for WScript or CScript executing from that app data directory, and you can actually be even more distinctive. You can have the zip file and the VBS file together because that is the pattern that we have seen other threats use. Especially if it goes on to do more stuff from that directory. If there are additional netcons or child processes or timelines, that is probably going to be worth a look in your environment. So, again, like I said, you're going to need to take a look at your own environment, do some load testing, see how you feel about it. But it's an option. It's good to have options. So, for Stef Rand Starling, final thoughts and kind of takeaways from this section. First of all, don't make assumptions. It's so hard to do, and we talk a lot about our biases, especially as analysts and as investigators in this field. We can only operate out of our own perspective. The more we can be aware of how that changes how we view things, the more we can kind of, I don't want to say rise above it, but we can work with it instead of having it cloud our judgment. It's really common, especially in the industry, to just look at all the execution as one monolithic piece of software. This is all Qbot. This is all Darkgate. But if you can kind of peel it away, sometimes you can find in certain circumstances these examples where it splits apart, which is nice. Give us a little bit more discrete tracking. And being able to do that, being able to detect behavior early, and being able to hopefully shut it down as quickly as possible, helps prevent that payload execution, or even that payload delivery, which is great. That gives you faster detection, and it gives you broader coverage. So now, let's say you've got these Stef Rand Starling detectors in your environment, these rules. Yeah, you might also have Databot or Darkgate detectors, but if you've got Stef Rand Starling, you've got more coverage. So the same thing is going to set off your rules for a bunch of different threats. And the more analytics you can get to fire, the more chances you have of catching that true evil and making sure analysts who are very busy and who have alert fatigue are able to get eyes on the things you really want them to get eyes on. Which brings us to part 2, which was going to be more about Qbot. And this is the slide that I had created when I first gave this talk, which has been retooled with all new examples for multiple reasons. And then about a month ago, this happened. there was a multinational law effort to shut down Qbot, aka Qbot, aka Pigslipbot infrastructure. So part of Qbot's infrastructure was that it had a botnet of infected systems that was being used primarily as C2 infrastructure. So those were shut down. And it's actually been fairly successful as far as I know. I don't believe that we have seen, I know we have not seen any active Qbot since that wasn't a previous infection. So that's been impressive, but it did change the direction of the talk just a little bit. So as I was kind of thinking about what am I going to talk about? I can't talk about TA570 and Qbot. And TA577 decided to hook me up with a topic and with a lot to talk about. So I have been updating this presentation down to the wire like yesterday because it has been a busy season and TA577 is back from vacation. So let's talk about them. Bless their hearts. So TA577 is an initial access broker and malware distribution group, and they're made by Proofpoint initially. And they're really big into prolific phishing campaigns. Now I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of emails going out on a major campaign day. It is unreal the amount of activity that these jerks can generate with one of their campaigns. When they were more active earlier this year and doing a lot of Qbot distribution, they were known as the Letters affiliate. So these folks have been around for a long time. They were initially also known as TR because they use letter pairs in their malware configurations. You can actually go in and start breaking down the malware. You have these campaign ID values in a lot of different types of malware. So there's a lot of things like I said, TR, BB, I think AA11 is one of the current campaign identifiers. Historically, they favored Qbot. Loved Qbot. Qbot was their bread and butter. October was like TA577 Qbot month. You know, they'd come back from vacation, get ready for the holidays, got money. It's just absolutely a nightmare. And they've also delivered other things. So that's the thing about these threat actors. They've delivered iStudy before. They've delivered Matt and Lucas. I do not know if I'm saying that right. And they delivered Smith as well. And so we all kind of knew that they weren't just going to not do anything anymore because especially this TA has used other malware families before. One thing about this TA is that they operate in cycles. So like I said, this chart, this is Qbot activity. So this is a combination of Qbot, TA570, and TA577 activity observed in red canary over the last couple of years. And like I said, you'd have these really intense months, these really big campaigns, and then they would take a little break for a little while. I think it's pretty common across the industry. Sometimes you'll see less activity this summer or over certain holidays. And TA577 is no different. The difference about this particular TA is that they do development cycles. TA570 and 577 appear to do development cycles and test different initial execution techniques to see which will be the most useful in the next big campaign. Proofpoint has a really, really great white paper that they put out in earlier this year about that topic. It's fantastic. And they make these changes really fast because they have them, because they do these step cycles. They've got backup ideas. And they're using scripts, which, like I said, are cheap and easy to change. And it's surprising how much tweaking a few things here or there can really make it hard for products and for vendors to keep track of who's doing what with these loaders. But I say that, it sounds very bleak. You can detect and track these loaders before the payload. Can, I promise. We did it with Qbot, which was great. We got to the point where we were working with different folks, we were using OSINT. We were able to identify TA570 and 577 loaders really quickly before anything else was able to happen. And the nice thing, like I said, when you get these prolific adversaries, you get defenders who love to make them have a bad day. And the more of a pain the adversary is, the more people delight in just ruining whatever they can for them. So just in the last couple of weeks, and I will have more links. I have had help from all of these folks who offer their information for free online. The curated intel team is fantastic. The prevalent team is fantastic. I know the Bird site is a controversial thing, but so many malware researchers and CTI analysts are still really active there. Love DFI report. I'm on these .ch resources like daily. They're wonderful, and the people who help contribute to those resources are fantastic analysts. And then, of course, there are teams, folks at Proofpoint who originally discovered these actors and kept up with them. It's wonderful. So like I said, once you get an idea of who you might want to have on your team, so to speak, who you trust, then you can use their intel and you can just run with it. And so when on September 22nd, Deutsche Telekom CERT put out this notice that they had seen a new TA577 campaign launching a Dartgate campaign. Woo, like I said, y'all, Dartgate is the new hotness. I think there's, as far as I know, 5 or 6 current ongoing campaigns using Dartgate as their favorite payload right now. So we saw this, Deutsche Telekom does wonderful work, their CTI team is fantastic. And so the researchers who had previously worked with Qbot and TA577 started really digging into it. Deutsche Telekom shared details of the activity that they had seen. So they shared some of the initial files that had been created. They shared the initial downloader command. And they shared, as you can see, this is the same Dartgate loader or a similar Dartgate loader that we saw before in copying curl and reading AutoIT. And I really want to focus on, remember, as early as we can, that first file creation and the initial downloader. So, on September 26th, the loader, we're just going to call it the loader for right now, dropped ICE ID. The next few slides that I'm going to click through are going to be information from ProxyLife's GitHub repos. ProxyLife is an amazing member of the Playlist team, and they have been keeping up with this threat actor for years. And they do all this malware analysis, they share it, they update it like to the hour, they put it in the GitHub repo, they put it on Twitter, and I absolutely trust their analysis, and we use it really heavily because it's like having somebody who's 100% dedicated to rooting this threat actor's day on the team already. It's fantastic. So a look at the GitHub repo, and what's going to happen as we go through the slides, you'll see a few of these things are in bold. Everything that we have already seen this loader do, as the slides progress, I'm going to highlight in bold. So, based on the Deutsche Telekom data that was shared, we've already seen this admin app data local temp folder being used. We've seen curl with this weird obfuscation in it. We've seen this combination of reaching out to an IP address with this strange 3-letter identifier token maybe in the URL. And so this is kind of where we're starting with ICE ID. 2 days later, we've got ICE ID again, same loader. So now we've got a few more things. We've got some of the original Dartgate Deutsche Telekom CERT information along with the previous ICE ID loader. So again, we've got this really interesting pdf.link initial file creation. The command has mixed case. We've got these echo and ping commands that are showing up. I love that folder so much, that directory, I love it. And they love run DLL32, and they have since before this campaign. They loved it when they were streaming Qbot too. So you start seeing the ping units that you executed October 1st. Now we switched payloads on October the 1st. And look at everything that we had already seen this loader do by the time we get to the next payload. Everything that that loader did on the 1st had already been publicly shared. So, again, it's tricky. You've got more obfuscation. Things are a little bit different, but it makes it trackable. And I'm sure those of you that are rule-minded are seeing maybe some slightly brittle opportunities, granted, especially when it comes to things like fouling, stream matching, regex patterns. They can be a little tricky to maintain over time, but it's a place to start. And and sometimes they can actually last well on their GPU paper, which is fantastic. October 3rd, we have the third payload of this campaign, and it is Qbot. Qbot is very similar to Qbot. And again, new payload, but we've seen these things. We've seen this same kind of command being executed and then pull down these payloads. Now, admittedly, on the 4th, it did change a little bit more dramatically, which is going to happen. The thing about this threat actor, again, is they're very savvy. This is their job, is this distribution. And then they sell initial access to wherever they're able to get into. So they're going to change things more dramatically as their lures, as their fishes become less successful over time. But there's still details. You've still got that same directory with the same weird pdf.link file. They're still doing weird stuff with formdl.exe. And you still got this log file. They actually used that a couple of slides earlier. And on October 5th, there's more Qbot. Again, it got a little bit more obscure. This was really interesting. They switched to JavaScript instead of the pdf.link file to execute the initial loader. But there's still patterns. And so if you're still looking for suspicious DLLs or run DLL32 execution, there are still opportunities to catch this loader before it delivers Qbot. So like I said, this is kind of summing up all of the things that we have seen. In this campaign, which has delivered so many payloads, there are still themes, there are still patterns. You've got that directory. My God, I love that directory so much. This is a great directory to keep an eye out for weird things executing from it. Especially if you think that this particular threat actor might be one of more concerned in your organization, or if you've seen them previously, because they love to reuse it. You've got a lot of command-line obfuscation, mixed case, carrots. You've got these random ping and echo commands. They're using curl.exe, which they have also used to Qbot in previous campaigns as well. You've got run DLL32 execution. Like I said, they love run DLL32. And there's more, so these opportunities are there. And I didn't do any big fancy analysis to find this out. I'm just a nerd. And I just went and looked at what the loaders look like in a repo, because this is like my new thing, is to talk about how early can we get, how far apart can we get the payload from the first thing that happens on the system, so the payload becomes a non-issue. It's the best feeling when you see like that initial PDF file get downloaded and we see it, and nothing else happens. It's so good, it's so awesome. I would like this for all of us. I would like for this to be the case for me, or existing teams as possible. So I don't want to just leave you with kind of ideas for potential rules or detections or things you could look for. For this, because we're in the middle of the campaign, I don't want to give you detection opportunities that have been road tested. I am going to give you mitigation ideas. Remember that GPO I mentioned about not letting evil scripts execute in your environment? It works for this too, which is wonderful. So again, like I said, consider it, think about it. I know GPOs can be kind of abstract, but something to consider. And somebody pointed this out to me after I gave the talk the first time. WScript.exe is actually in Microsoft's recommended block rules. So you want to go take a look at some of the block rules that they have suggested. Judicious use of them can be extremely useful. Depends on your org, depends on what you're doing. But again, if you can just have the thing not work, that's ideal. All right, so final thoughts for TA577 and for this section. Like I said, this threat actor does like to change their TTPs, and it can be daily. Really intense Qbot campaigns like the one we had earlier this year with all the OneNote fun in February, they were changing TTPs sometimes within hours of each other. But if you follow trusted community sources, you have a huge advantage because you already know these researchers. You know, I know that as soon as TA577 starts up shenanigans, that Proxy Life and all these other researchers are going to be on it, on it, and they're going to get that information out publicly available as soon as they can because this is their passion, and I'm so grateful for it. And that initial access detection, I like I've been saying, it reduces your risk. It keeps the payload from getting onto the system in a perfect world. And also, like I said, additional mitigation strategies can help. Since script execution has been so very popular as a initial access or initial execution method, it's worth considering how you can reduce script impacts in your environment if possible. All right, as we come to the end of our time together, what are our key takeaways? You already know because we did the bottom line up front, but let's go over them again. As you've seen, initial execution techniques are very frequently changed and updated because it's cheap and easy for adversaries to do that, change the script just a little bit, enough to throw us off. But if you can get into the weeds and track these initial execution techniques, track these loaders, and separate them from your payloads, it can pay off. You can have more detection time, which is invaluable. You can potentially stop follow-on activity before it starts. And the thing that I really want to bring home is that yes, you here today can use open source intelligence to help you do this. You don't need big fancy tools. You don't need to have, you don't need to be in like the secret Slack channels that all the malware analysts are in or on the super secret industry Discord. All of this information that I've shared with you today it's out there. It's being shared. I don't want to just say that and then not tell you what some of my favorite resources are. So I have a list on Twitter. Like I said, I'll make sure the slide is available. I'll make sure the list is available. A lot of the researchers and analysts I've mentioned already have, they're already on the list, so something to think about. I know Google is not OSINT, but your favorite trusted search engine can usually find some of these strings. I've had really good luck. We had a cryptor earlier this year that I was able to figure out was a cryptor because I was just Googling weird strings and found some awesome sandbox information that was available. So search engines can be helpful. Love VirusTotal. VirusTotal is a huge help, especially if you do not have your own dedicated malware analysis team or you want to see what other people are seeing. It's very useful for that. Love abuse.ch, like I said, I'm on their sites on almost a daily basis. Joe Sandbox and a bunch of other publicly available sandboxes are fantastic. 2 thumbs up for CyberChef. If you haven't had a chance to play with it before, you can. If you want to do some of this analysis yourself, you can get into it. And there's a ton more options. But it really, if you're able to kind of find your own favorite sources, like I said, it just gives you so much bang for your buck in your investigations. It's almost like you've grown your team with these experts to pull them in, which is, it's a win. It's a win for all of us. And that comes to the last of the content I have for you today, and we have time for questions. And I would love to take questions. Yes?
This may seem silly, but is the mixed case file naming, is that
That's a good question.
Basically advertise that, like use our tool, is that part of their, like is there a psychology analysis to see?
That's a good question. So the question is, for things like mixed case use, is that something that you can use to discern if the commands you're looking at or the loaders you're looking at are a specific threat actor, like TA577?
Yeah.
It's true. So the thing about mixed case and those kinds of text obfuscation techniques is you really can't do any kind of attribution. It's a queue, but for example, like I said, Raspberry Robin also uses mixed case, and they're associated with evil port. So unfortunately, that's not as good of an indicator for specific attribution, but it is going to tell you that it's evil. I have not seen very many legitimate admins decide to use a lot of mixed case. Like, yeah, I typo here and there, but it's an cheap, easy way for them to try and fool AV section in particular without having to put forth a lot of effort.
I was thinking of it as a developer where we always throw stuff in for fun and on your names and stuff, and you have to be careful because it might be Easter eggs. So I thought more of, are they giving away the farm because they're trying to advertise?
To be clever. That can happen. So the question is, if you've got somebody who's got developers that are using Easter eggs or using terms that they're very fond of or references they're very fond of, are they kind of tipping their hat a little bit? That has happened. Sandworm is a great book. If you haven't read it yet, there have been threat actors that have used very specific recurrent references in their code that's absolutely waved the flag to eventually let defenders know exactly who's doing the work. So yeah, it does. It absolutely does happen. Like with anybody who writes code, people make typos that are consistent. People have their favorite way of, putting different functions together. And you can absolutely start to kind of fill those apart if you get enough access to enough data.
Yeah, because it seems to be a good way to pre-filter subset before.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to pre-filter it, so I was curious how to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Yes?
That one GPO you mentioned about blocking VPS automatic execution, does that cause possibly a lot of IT problems?
Possibly, yes. So the question is, will instituting GPO policy to block things like, you said WScript in particular, cause a lot of problems or VBS could usually cause a lot of problems in IT? The answer is yes, it could. It absolutely could, which is why you have to very carefully test that before rolling it out. This will not work for all scripts and all environments, especially if you do have a lot of folks that are doing legitimate dev work. But for those cases where maybe you do have a whole swath of users that don't, and you can create a policy for them if they're not anywhere near any of the dev environments. So again, it will require a lot of testing. You're absolutely right. It will create big problems. You don't road test that beforehand. Yes.
Do you know why they're so, this works, do you know why they're so aggressive in October? Just the sheer spike that they hit, and then it dramatically drops off a cliff. Do you have any insight into why that is the case?
I have speculations as to why that is the case.
I love to hear it.
So I'm not sure if that feed will come through, but the question is why October, or why is there this dramatic increase in October, and why does it drop off so significantly? I think that it's because everybody's back from vacation, and some places have different vacation months than other places. Some countries have vacation later in the summer. My hypothesis is that they come back from vacation, do a dev cycle, get ready, run everything in October, and then they have a month or two to work the access that they've gained in the meantime. So it's this big campaign, it's almost like a marketing campaign. They get all these leads, and then they follow up on the leads over the next month or two until it's time to run another one.
So that's a maintenance. They're doing support for their customers.
Right, the support maintenance cycle, baby. It always kind of blows my mind how closely some of the, and how professionally organized some of these groups are. Yes, in the back.
For those who are interested in entering a career in malware and intelligence analysis, what pathway would you recommend for entering the field?
That's a good question. So the question is about what pathway would I recommend for entering the field for, you said malware analysis specifically?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a tricky one because there's, how am I going to do it? It depends. I know, I'm an Intel person. I have to say it at least once. It really does. It does depend. It depends on what you're interested in. So do you want to do exclusively blue team work? Do you want to do a little bit of kind of analysis to help develop red team tools? Those pathways are going to look really different. So that would be kind of the first place I would start, is do you want to do red team, blue team, purple team? And then just doing your best to take advantage of free resources that are available. Like I said, CyberChef is fantastic, and there's some really good courses available for CyberChef. Some are available kind of free online. I know Applied Network Defense is a really excellent CyberChef course. If you haven't taken that yet, and you're interested in CyberChef, I hear it's fantastic. And so that would be my first recommendation. And then after that, it's just a matter of kind of finding good opportunities. And the thing about this field that I've noticed is everybody's path into it is different. And that's wonderful. It makes it stressful when you're trying to figure out where's my path, how do I get in there. But the fact that everybody has kind of a different journey into cybersecurity is gives us a lot of different perspectives. It makes it harder. You have to kind of have that internal momentum and push yourself forward. But if you can do that, you can kind of take your own way and figure out what you want to do, what you like to do.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. Any other questions?